Hi, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. Well, my guest today is Jim Segala. Jim has over 30 years' experience in the scientific and engineering field, designing and building complex experimental systems. Jim holds a PhD in physics and advanced degree in engineering. For over 11 years, Jim has all been in active research in the Institute for Advanced Studies at Austin, where he performed experiments in radiobiology, quantum entanglement, quantum optics, my God, and
Those are tough to
vacuum
say. Those are tough.
polarization. Can we please welcome Jim to the show? Hello
Yeah.
there.
How you doing, Bob? It's great to be on the show again.
Thank you. Tell us about your research.
Well, it started back in a time when I was hired to work in a institute in Austin with Hal Puthoff, who is a very famous physicist here in the States, and he gets involved in a lot of very fringy type of investigations. He worked with Bob Bigelow a lot, who owns Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
In other places, he worked with other leading scientists in the field. And at his institute, you're always finding very strange things to investigate. And one of them was that a lot of the reports coming back from people out in that are going out to these very high energy places, like you're finding in your area, they would come back and they would have some kind of medical issue that could not explain, and it was like very difficult for them. They would get rashes, lesions. They would develop these very strange autoimmune diseases. They would have incredible headaches or some personality change or something, and it was just amounting that they just couldn't understand why they were having all these. And it wasn't just a few people, it was a lot of people that were going into places like Skinwalker or Blind Frog or these places that are known for a lot of energetic type of experiences. These people were coming out with something different, and it was always a big question mark on why that was happening. So that's the research that I got involved in back in, this is probably now almost 10 years ago. And ever since then, it's just been cascading and getting bigger and bigger, and, bringing in more and more people throughout the world. And now we have a population of, well over almost 300 people all over the world that are contributing to the research that is putting, basically a fine point on why are these people getting injured.
Can you describe the equipment and scientific methods you use during your studies?
Sure. So, I mean, it was kind of very interesting when we first got involved in this whole subject. And when I mean us, I was put on a scientific team with other scientists and medical doctors that were trying to understand this. It was apparent that there was something in the environment causing these people to, number one, have the experiences, and then number two, have some kind of injury happen to their body that later pronounce itself, and they would end up in the hospital or something. So we knew there was something external. They were not making this up within their own head, and they were, their body wasn't manifesting this. Something from the outside was actually happening to them and coming in and doing this damage. So we said, if that's the case, why can't we build some equipment that we spread around them or have in their vicinity that allowed us not only to have a indication that something is going on, but also make a reading of the environmental signals that were changing during that particular time when that experience happened. So we put together at that time, this is 10 years ago, we put together very crude equipment that we actually let people have on their body or put around in their person. And basically we started recording, and we asking them how they're doing, give us some narratives, and it just blossomed into a much more sophisticated piece of equipment. And if you allow me to share my screen, I can actually show you some
Yeah,
of
of
these
course. Yes, please.
very interesting videos that were signals that we get when we put equipment in. Now, so um, what I'm showing you here is a what we call our portal. It's a indication of the waveforms that are being collected by devices that are, for instance, this one is at Blind Frog Ranch, which is a ranch in Utah, very, very famous for having, very crazy things happening to it. This is a device that we have there now. It's real time. We actually, this is actually going on right now there. So it's, this is today, and they've had some crazy things going on. I don't. This is the first time I've seen this today, but something happened. But so we monitor all of these signals. I mean, there's so many signals that we monitor, and I'll show you some of them. So these are all the ones we have: environmental, we have inertial, we have radiation, Geiger counters. We have if people are wearing watches, we can measure like their heart rate and movement.
Mm.
We can get like the infrasound that's coming through, and we can pretty much measure all these signals simultaneously and keep a record of them. And not only that, we can look at them in a real-time basis. So now this is the real data that's coming from those particular devices, and we can get an indication on what's going on. So we can maybe look at the radiation. I can't see that. So we can get an indication of the radiation that's coming through here and see whether or not we can, if there's something that we need to look at. And then, of
Mm.
course, what happens is that these people have the ability to add incidences at any point during this, so we can actually measure and show that, when these people are having these episodes, these experiences, that something in the environment is actually changing. And just to give you a quick idea of what type of equipment we have available, this is basically a device that we call our MUPAS Mini, and it's a device that basically sits on their shelf or sits on their table or something, somewhere in their house, and it allows them to monitor what's going on in their environment. It reports back to us, and it sends it up very securely up to some cloud-based infrastructure that we keep record of it. And again, at the same time, we're recording all of these crazy phenomena and actually asking them to basically document and give us narratives on what is actually happening to them at the time. So this is basically what we're doing. So this is the instrumentation, and this is the results. This is the information that's coming from that, and it's available to us in real time. That allows us to, basically see what's going on. Here's another device that we have. This is not as energetic as the one at Blind Frog. This is a test device that we have. And of course, we can get some imagery if we want. There's a possibility of being able to get some imagery. So this is actually a camera that's attached to the device. You can see it's a little windy where it is, so the leaves are moving a little bit. But
Yeah.
at night, it'll stare up into the sky. This is upside down, but because the camera's upside down, it
Yeah.
stares up to the sky, and it's looking for basically orbs or anomalous things that are going by. And when that happens, it'll actually send an alert to, or a notification to, the person that has this device, and tell them that something crazy is going on, and what happened, what did you feel, what was the thing that caused this, did you have any effects and things like that.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Were there any patterns in when or where these events occurred then?
So there is. So I wanted to show you some very interesting waveforms. So, this is something that we've collected over the years, and we had some. So we did an initial study of just 30 people, and that was back probably 5 years ago, or yeah, maybe like three years ago, and we collected a bunch of data from them and took their narratives, and then from the 35 people that we had in our study, we were able to capture about 300 events where somebody reported that they were having an anomalous event or an experience, and at the same time, we were able to catch some type of anomalous event in the one of the channels. Like, for instance, this is an event that they said they returned home from being out most of the day, got ringing in their ear, in left ear, and at the exact same moment they said that happened, we recorded this enormous spike in the electromagnetic radiation. This is another incident where somebody reported. A lot of these things we can't show you because these are all very personal things that people
Yeah.
narrate. But when we get permission, we actually will show it to you. But we have literally hundreds of these situations where people report that they've had some anomalous event happen to them or some experience, and then at the same time see the data and capture the data. So we now have two data points, right? What they say and what we're actually reading in the environment. So this is something that and here's another example of one of these, situations where people have, the participants in our study have had some type of, very profound experience. And at the same exact time, we measured something like, for instance, this one, it says we had a plug remove itself from the wall. It was sitting about a foot away from the poles, from the outlet. Now, so when they report that to us, they don't know that the signals are going like this, though. So this is a very, very high energetic signal at that point. So whatever happened in their house that caused the plug to come out of the wall actually was picked up by the device, and we recorded it, and this became one of the device, or one of the situations or data points that we use in our models. So we've had hundreds of these. We literally have 300 of these situations where somebody reported something, and simultaneously there was something going on in the environment that we detected to be not normal, basically. So you can see these very high peaks in the microwave, or very, very high peaks in, say, the gyroscopic channels. I mean, so we just have so many of these, and these are just examples of some of them.
Can you describe the most compelling or unexplainable events you personally witnessed?
So I spent a lot of time. I don't know if you know this, if you've seen this show, but I was on Skinwalker Ranch for one season way back. I guess it's 2019.
Yeah.
But lately, I've been spending a lot of time on Blind Frog Ranch. It turns out that Blind Frog Ranch has just an amazing amount. And I'll actually, while I'm talking about it, I'll put the Blind Frog Ranch site up. So this is the site of Blind Frog Ranch. The data coming from there is very, very energetic. And what you do find out is when you're there on the property, you get this feeling of euphoric. I mean, you feel really good about yourself. I mean, I can't explain it. So basically, anybody that's ever gone there had basically walked away and says, "Wow, I really feel good after this." So it's it's a it's an area where the energy is very, very positive. On the other hand, I've spent probably 2 years investigating things on Skinwalker Ranch, and that's the opposite. You go there and you're always looking over your shoulder. You're always like afraid, or you have a lot of anxiety. So it's a very, very different situation. And the funny thing is that they're only 20, 30 miles apart. I mean, they're not very far from each other. Yet Blind Frog Ranch area, it really gives you a lot of high energy, make you feel good type of thing. But on the other hand, Skinwalker Ranch, you go into that area, you're always looking over your shoulder, or you're feeling like somebody's watching you or
Yeah.
something like that. And you talk to people, and they're all reporting. Says, yeah, I don't even want to go anywhere near Blind or Skinwalker Ranch, because it's just like it scares the hell out of me, and I don't want to go there. But Blind Frog Ranch, people actually will go there to go swim in the pond where they found all the frogs, and they actually come out like cured of things. I've never actually seen that, but they
Oh,
get to the point where they feel that they've been cured by something. So that, if you ask me like what's the most profound things that's ever happened, is that is just amazes me that people can go to one place and feel intimidated, and go to some other place and feel great about themselves.
did you observe an environmental or psychological effects on humans or animals in that area?
Oh yeah. So on Black Frog Ranch, we had situations where people were actually having, oh, I'm sorry, on Skinwalker Ranch, people were actually having personality changes. People that would basically have their family reports says what's going on. I mean, these people actually have changed a little bit. They've gotten maybe more angry, or more snippy, or something like that. Something would change in their personality that they really can't explain after they've witnessed some type of an experience in the property. And so if you look, so one of the interesting things that we did is that we took this equipment that I was showing you, these devices, And of course, we also use these watches. We have these watches that we use. We distributed them throughout to quite a few people in the area. And what we would find is that they would have these experiences, and their family would report that why all of a sudden this person would be all of a sudden start getting angry or anxious or having very bad episodes or not being able to sleep and things like that. So there was a lot of effects that happened to the person, either through injuries or something like that, during these episodes of experiencing. And it's not like it happened every single day. I mean, it could be maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months, but there would be like this cascade of events that would happen very, very slowly. You'd see like the data that was coming over the over the data would start to increase, and you get noisier and noisier, and all of a sudden they have these big episode, and then they would report the episode happening, and then we'd say, okay, wow, we see it actually ramping up over a period of a week, and then it just hits this big pinnacle at some point. They have the experience, or they see the UFO, they see the orb, they see whatever their particular experience is, and then it would drop off, and they would go back to normal basically, and they would just basically come back and be normal again, and their family would say, yeah, things are okay. And we get all these narratives now from people now, and that was Utah. So right now we're all over the world. I mean, we have devices like this, like I showed you, all over Australia and South America. We have all over Europe. We all over the United States. So we have a very large population of these things, and people right now, we've got where I used to say we've had, thousands of narratives and things like that. Now we have almost 100,000 narratives. So we're just ramping up, and we have a lot of people out there on a day-to-day basis, putting in their narratives, telling us how their day is, telling us what's going on. And it's quite exciting because there's a lot of people out there that are really intuitive and really want to understand what's going on.
There's a question from Dragon Ball. Why do you think the energies of the two ranches are so different, given they're not too far apart?
So that's a great question, and I thought about that a lot. So, given that we place devices really around that area, all the way up to, basically up into the canyon area, down past Skinwalker Ranch, we had a lot of devices. And you can look at the patterns, and it almost like, I don't know if you've ever heard this, like there's these like energy pathways that are going from way up into the canyon area down towards Skinwalker Ranch. And it's almost like the whole area around Skinwalker, or no, the whole area around Blind Frog is
Yeah.
like almost like a positive energy. But then as it gets farther away, it falls off to a negative energy. And it's as anybody in science or anything, they know that a lot of times nature will not have a continuous flow of something. It'll oscillate. It will go high, low, high, low. So it almost appears that there's a high point over in where Blind Frog Ranch is, and a low point where Skinwalker Ranch is. Because over the years, the lore of Skinwalker is that there always been bad things happening. There's always there's been deaths, and there's been just very, very bad things if you look at the history of it. But in the Blind Frog Ranch area, there was people buried there. The Aztecs buried their gold. I mean, people would just go there and live. But it's so it's a good area. So why would you put all your stuff in where you're not very happy? You put it where you feel good about yourself. So I think it's just has to do with the energy flow in that area. And people have called that, there's a word for that. They call it ley lines, but we can map that out, and it actually looks like there's a high and low as it travels from the upper canyons down through that area in Utah where Skinwalker is. Now, if we had, the wherewithal, we can actually instrument more, and we actually have a few more devices now that we're a little bit more into this thing. But it's just amazing that that question comes up a lot.
There's a question from Steffi, Dr. Jim. Have you investigated Stardust Ranch?
So if I recall, that was a ranch that they had a lot of things happen to it. Bigelow went there, they did some investigations. We talked to them, and I believed, and we were just about to go there and instrument the place. And I believe at that point, the owner passed away. I believe that's the ranch. And who was ever in the audience could actually confirm that. Ever since then, we really haven't heard anything from them. But we were ready to go there and actually start investigating because there's some really very strange things going on there. And it turns out the underneath that ranch, Stardust Ranch, there's a lot of water. There's a whole big aquifer under there, and the same thing happens in Utah where the strange stuff happens. Obviously at Black Rock Ranch, there's water everywhere underneath there in these in these underground, you want to call them rivers, or just tributaries that go all over the place. So it's just ironic that, and also there's a whole bunch of canyons right around that area. So it's got the same type of thing in those two areas. They've got the canyons and they've got water underneath. So it's possible why you have such high things in both areas.
I know there's a question from Dragon here, Dragon Ball. I think similar to what you said as well here. Are there any ley lines running through the two ranches that you know of?
Well, I don't know it for a fact. I don't know if people have plotted ley lines specifically, but I have inferred from the data that we've collected that in fact there is what we would call energy lines that get run through that are very positive on, towards the north, and
Yeah.
towards the south it's more negative. So if you want to call those ley lines, I would say yeah, absolutely.
Um, oh, I know what I'm going to ask you. You briefly went on it. What challenges did you face while conducting field work in the basin?
Well, that's always the question is, we've had equipment failures. We've had people that would react very, very differently in the basin and in that area than any other area of any area of the country. So when you bring in equipment and you bring in people, you really have to be careful on how you do it. What one of the interesting things that we found out, and I would love somebody to kind of ask some more questions about this, is that when you take a piece of property that you say, well, okay, this is a very, very energetic piece of property like Skinwalker or Blind Frog, it turns out that if you instrument the property and you don't have anybody on the property, very little happens. It's when you introduce people, sentient beings like us, into the property, that's when you start seeing all these big dramatic things happening. Like you would say, people would, have
Yeah.
these visions, or they would get nosebleeds, or, they would have personality changes. So it's when you introduce people into those areas when you start really getting up into, or start having the profound experiences. So, you can basically say that it's the introduction of, or it's the phenomena that is there, concentrated in those areas, but it's the people and it's the beings. It might be animals, because we've had problem with cattle, we've had problem with all sorts of things, not just people, but they start acting very strange during periods of time. And then we've recorded this. So of course, you can't record much more about cattle than just observing them, but the people report, when they do come on, they do feel something very, very different. And if you talk to Dwayne Ollinger, or anybody else that's been on Blind Frog, they'll tell you that when they get on the property, they just feel different. The things are happening to them. They're
Mm,
seeing things. And
yeah, that's true. Were there measurable physical effects, electronic magnetic changes, radiation tied to the phenomena?
yeah, I think that it's one of the things that we do measure, and you can see it right here on the Blind Frog Ranch data that's coming off right now, is that you get these very strange indications of something going on. Like for instance, last year I was spent about a week there. We instrumented it. They had some problems with finding this very strange equipment and strange things on the ranch, and then we instrumented it over the evening, and we found that there was a very large deviation in the magnetic vector and also in the gyroscopic vector, where, unexplained. There was nobody there. It was like completely abandoned of people. But there was just at night during about a 2 hour period, just things seemed to be very crazy, as though a it's speculating maybe some energetic craft or some energetic thing came and was just observing and looking and basically trying to understand. Maybe it was a some kind of a probe or something that was looking around the property.
How consistent were the observations across different investigations or the time periods?
Well, that's a really good question, because when in science, you really want to establish a very good statistical model, and then when you report the statistical model in any kind of publication or anything like that, you want to have basically a standard which is accepted by the community, and we shoot for a five, what we call a 5 sigma result, meaning that if another person or another agency repeated the same experiment, they would get the same result within a very, very narrow margin. And we were able to get what we called almost, it was like 4.5 sigma, which means that, it's a little mathy to describe that. For if somebody else, like if 100 people went and did the exact same experiment we did, they would basically, most of them would come up with the same exact answer that we came up with. So we would get the same data. And that's what you want to have when you report these things out, when you publish, or you bring it out to any kind of agency where that's going to be a publish. You want to have this really good high statistical model that you report.
Let's have a think here. Do your team experience any health effects during or after the research?
Well, not so much us, but the people that were with us. Like, for instance, some of the people that are on the ranch, like at Skinwalker Ranch, they went away and they had some issues when they got home. There was a lot of, they called it the hitchhiker. People would go there and they would come back, and they were family members and would get sick. And it turns out, so we actually did an interesting investigation back a couple years ago, where we took all the people that came back and claimed that they now had family members that were having these issues. They were all kind of having, there was a large portion of them having the same type of autoimmune disease happen to them, very rare autoimmune disease, which was kind of nerve-wracking to say, wow, these people were, these people would go to these places, come home, and then a family member would have, all of a sudden just have these diseases happen to them that were all very unexplained, and not a genetic thing, and very rare diseases. And it was like we found probably a half a dozen of these people all having the same rare autoimmune blood disease that we just couldn't explain. It was very strange.
Do you believe the phenomena are natural, technological, physiological, or something else?
Well, it seems that it's intelligent in its own way. It doesn't seem that it's, anything in nature, anything nature would create would not, unless it's like a sentient being, wouldn't seem intelligent. But it seems that this phenomena reacts to the way people are. So if you do something to this phenomena, like we've had situations where people have gone out and they've gone into areas that would be deemed as like destructive, they would come back home and they would have like miserable times. They would have headaches and they would have problems, and they would basically walk away from doing something on a negative basis, and coming back with some effect that was very, very negative. So it seems like this thing reacts in an intelligent way. So I would say that whatever it is, we don't, maybe it might not be terrestrial, it might not be it might be extraterrestrial, but whatever it is, it's intelligent. It seems to react to us where nature wouldn't really have the ability to do that, or it never really exhibited anything like that.
A question from Janice here. Do you have any plans to come to the UK, such as Rendleshams or
Sure.
Bob's location,
Oh
Bempton?
yeah. So Rendlesham, we have devices in Rendlesham. In fact, if you, one of the interesting things is that so we've got a bunch of, so when people join the study, they get the option of coming in and looking at our public devices. So we got Black Rock Ranch, we've got Heselden Valley. So we've got, I think we got like 4 or 5 units in Heselden Valley. We have the Rendlesham Forest. We have a device that's they're very, very active. That when they, when you actually I can bring it up when you get these things. So this is actually they're offline, so they're offline a lot of the times. So this
Yeah,
particular device, but Rendlesham Forest is one of the other devices that we have. So we're in Heselden, we're in Rendlesham. There's a bunch in Australia that we allow. This one's in South America. This one's we have them all over the place. So we're in Europe a lot, and we've got probably of the 300 devices that, or the 300 people out there that are participating in our study, I would say probably 20 of them are in the European vicinity. A
right.
lot in Australia. It's amazing how many Australia people there are. Obviously, there's a lot in the United States, but we have a lot of devices out there that people use, on a day-to-day basis to really understand what's going on. So, yeah, so we're all over the place.
Would you consider the area safe for visitors or researchers today?
Bob, can you repeat that? Maybe I missed that.
Would you consider the area safe for visitors or researchers today to go to any of these places if they you could?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we've got some people that work with us that actually has visited Heselden. I mean, gone there, and they have plans to go, other places. I think they go to I forgot the name of it. It's Moonstruck or something like that ranch that has very, very a lot of things going on. They visit they visit places in Utah all the time. So we've got people that actually go out there and visit and collect data. The new thing now is psionics. They go out there and they see if they can actually get something to happen just by basically trying it. And they have we've been fortunate enough to be able to incorporate it into our things. The Moose headset and things like that. So we have a lot of recording devices, and they go out there and they do field studies. And we bring that data in, and it becomes part of our overall data that we present out to the people.
How do you respond from people who think it's a load of rubbish and
So I mean,
about the
yeah,
scientific
I
community?
so we I, I know this sounds very strange, but you welcome it because you can't always be pulling from one side. You can't always have people that just think everything is this way. You have to have people on the other side saying it's the other way. Otherwise, you're never really going to come to the right answer. So I would imagine that the answer that is really true, the one that explains the phenomena, is somewhere in between the people that are negative about this and people that are positive about this. So you need to listen to them and bring in their stuff. So when people have negative connotations, or they talk badly, or whatever, whatever they particularly do, I think that's healthy. You need to have that kind of thing. Otherwise, it's always going to go in one direction, and we're never really going to know exactly what's going on.
I'm going to say that. What precautions would you recommend for anybody studying the region?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. A lot of people report that they have had a lot of issues related to doing the study, as though the phenomena actually starts hooking up to them. And I don't want to use the word messing with them, but interacting with them more stringently than before. So, in other words, people that actually start investigating this open themselves up to the phenomena, then investigating them a little bit. And that's actually quite profound to say or to think about. But most of the people that get involved in this seem that they develop a heightened level of experiences because they're just asking questions and getting involved and doing the things. So, that's really, one of the things that I would say is that you prepare yourself, because the more you ask questions about the phenomena, the more you try to learn about it, the more they're going to want to learn about you, because then you become an interesting character for them, or whatever this phenomena is.
Yeah, Steph's asking a question. Are the
Oh,
higher powers in government taking an interest in your work?
so the answer is no, not that I know of or aware of. But I will say this: the higher powers in academia are definitely looking at this. Like academia, like Harvard, Rice University, Stanford University, are all really getting on board. They're saying, "Look, I think we have a problem," and it's not the physics department; it's the humanities department that's getting involved in this, because they know that there's something happening to the population, and not just in this country. I mean, when I say you guys are in Europe, but the arrogance of the United States is that everything cool happens in the United States, but that's not true. There's so many things going on all over the place that the the institutions that are out there that really didn't want to get involved, all of a sudden they're starting to think, there's something going on here, we need to look at this thing. The government, I don't know, I can't really say much, I don't know what they're doing, but the academia, the big universities are seriously getting involved in this and really, becoming part of the solution now. It's amazing, because they have so much weight behind them that they can do some amazing things.
I can imagine so. Um, did your findings support or contradict existing theories about the basin?
So I don't think so. I don't know. I think that the basin has always been a place of very, strange things happened. I think that what we found supported what people have been saying over the past, believe it or not, almost 100 years. I mean, there's been a phenomena reported going all the way back to, you know, deep into the 1900s. So, it's just amazing that to this day we're still seeing that, and all the research that has been going on in that area that we've been doing really supports that, and it actually corroborates a lot of the data, talks about what the period is, like those ley lines that we talked about. There's a lot of people that speculated that there's a ley line that comes down from the basin, the upper basin where the
Yeah,
canyon is, and comes down. And then we said, we did read that. And then there's this big question of why all the Native Americans seem to be populated in one particular area. And we found out that that's an area that there's a lot of, very, very positive energy that we've detected. So it's amazing how when you do this research, you get correlations of all this historical data and reasons why, large populations of peoples and end up staying in those areas, and that's just not in this area. It's all over the place. It's in Australia, there's a lot of these places. I mean, Australia is like really big in this stuff. I mean, there's so many strange things happening in Europe, in your area. A lot of these things happen. So
yeah,
and like Heselden, we
yes,
get a lot of great data from the Heselton devices, and we find out that, in fact, we're reading the same stuff that these people have been reading all these years. So it's really great to know that we're on the right track and measuring the right things and asking the people the right questions.
I know Shelley's in chat room here. She said, Mr. Brown, can you ask Mr. Segalia if he's going to share the Mupus link?
Oh yeah, so they're actually you can actually so here's the QR code for people that know how to use that, and then there's the link that people can get onto and take a look at. So
Oh,
on
yeah,
this, yeah, on this link, there's so much information. So like, first of all, you can get in here and you can read all about our study. By the way, we're funded. We got, amazingly, the one of the participants in our first study, which was the first 36 people, was so enamored with this study and really started to get control of themselves. So let me just tell you, it's actually an interesting story. So when we first started the study, we didn't really understand what the impact of experiencing these very profound phenomena is to people and how it affect their daily lives. And until we actually got into it, and this particular family, Two of the members of the family really were being affected by this thing significantly, or having problems, living out their day. When they got into the study and they started putting in their narratives, they start looking at the data and they start seeing that they can actually not control it, but they understood it better. It became a part of their lives, and they were able to rationalize it. So when the person that this family came back to me like 2 years ago and said, if you ever want to do the study again, we would support you financially and help the people get to the point where they can get on here. So when you come into the study, you basically don't have to, it doesn't really cost very much. We ask you to contribute your data as best as possible to, give us your narratives, help us with the data processing and things like that. But we were very fortunate. So this is a site that you can go to, and here's the QR code that you can actually go read about this thing. And
Yeah.
then, of course, in the site here, there's an educational thing that you can go through, and all the papers are here. You can go and look at the phase 1 study report. All this stuff is available. You can just basically go through and look at all this stuff. But and yeah,
Right,
so
yeah.
that is the code that oops, wrong one. This is the code that you would use.
Right. Right. How did you ensure your data collection remains objective and credible?
So that is the burning question. So I will tell you, one of the things that you do, is that you have to adhere to a lot of standards. That's what I talked about, getting the right statistical model, getting this right and stuff like that, because the scrutiny when you publish something like this is so high that most of the papers now that go and they have any kind of relation to what we're talking about here get kicked out right away, and they don't really. So you have to be so careful. One of the advantages that I have is that when I worked as a scientist, or when I started working as a scientist, I was at Hal Puthoff's lab in Austin, Texas. And Hal, Dr. Puthoff is probably one of the best researchers in this field. He did all of the remote viewing stuff. He did a lot of investigations into a lot of crafts. He went to a lot of sites, but his scientific method that he used evolved, for him. And then when I started working for him, what was it, like almost 15 years ago now?
Yeah.
You start learning these things, and that's the first thing that when I got there, that's the first thing you learn from him. How to do this right. So you have to take the methods. You have to use verifiable materials. So when you have an instrument, it has to be verified. It has to have, all the documentation, so you know exactly what you get. And then when you take data, you have to do it in such a way that it follows a certain protocol. Like we use what they call an IRB. IRB is a institution, or it's a committee that actually makes sure that you're taking data in a right way from a person, and storing it and doing all this stuff in the proper way. In fact, we're using Harvard's IRB right now.
Oh God. Oh yeah. Yes. um, what do your findings suggest about the limits of current scientific understanding?
Well, I think that for the most part, what we don't understand still is we know that this phenomena is causing experiences to happen, and it's actually leaving physical marks on our body. We know that. I mean, we've had so much data that supports that. We're continually getting data. It's getting stronger and stronger. We're reaching the point where we can say, within 5 sigma, we know that this happened. The problem is that we don't know what agency is this? I mean, is this something that's off planet? Is this another civilization? Is this something else? So our limit to say that, okay, I know that it's happening, or good, I have a good feeling that, statistically that it's happening, but who's doing it, what's doing it, we can't say. And there's a
Yeah,
lot of,
that's it. What is it?
yeah, right. So we have a lot of old school people who say, oh, it's the Russians, it's the Chinese, it's the this, it's that, it's the United States government. But, I got to tell you that, it doesn't look that way. I mean,
Uh,
it's just that it's
you
so,
know, or is it other intelligence watching you?
Yeah, well, that's what it is. We just don't know where it is. What's the origin? Is it just a portal that somebody that some civilization opened that looking at us? We don't really know. So when you ask about what's our limitations, I don't think that, we haven't been able to take that step to say, okay, what is the call? Who's doing this? Who's making these things happen to us?
Exactly. But that's got you into studying it and finding out more about why is it happening. And it's to be all these hotspots around the world where it's always happening.
Right. Right. So there, what we're seeing. So one of the interesting things, and now we've got like almost. Well, actually, I think we just crossed over the 300 mark. One of the things that we're doing is we're making a heat map of a planet and looking at where things happen and kind of showing as it progresses from one area. So we might be able to see like, something happening over in say the Blind Frog Ranch area and then propagating over and then showing up in the Skinwalker area and things like that. So that's one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to get an idea now that we get more and more participants all over the world doing this, how the data flows, how these experiences flow from person to person. Because one of the interesting things that we do as an experiment from person to person is that we try to have one of the participants try to try to intent what they're thinking onto another one. And then, so we're getting a lot of cross, basically, you could even call it like a quantum entanglement between two disparate people. They might be on both sides of the planet, yet their data, like for instance, this might sound crazy to some people, but it's almost like the data coming from one device on one side of the planet is getting correlated with another person's data from another side of the planet, although they've never met before. They hardly ever speak, and they just basically just interact, very casually on our system, but they seem to be joining and leaking up. I says, how the heck could that possibly happen? So as we get smarter and smarter with this thing, we're going to start building data models that allow us to really start getting into understanding why these things happen. How can somebody cross the on the other side of the earth, be connected to some small extent to somebody else on the other, on a, thousands of miles away. So we're starting to understand, get the data, but I think we're far enough away from that to say that we don't really can't speculate on what it is, but we can surely speculate that it is happening.
Exactly. What future research would you like to see conducted in these areas?
Well, so I think that we can continue basically trying to understand what's going on with the person in a more generic way. We're starting to use what we call the moves, which is it's a headband that, I don't know if anybody can see this, but there's a headband that you wear. And then when you have these experiences, it records and shows you your brain waves while you're having these experiences or while you're seeing a UFO and things like that. So what we're starting to do is get more and more people interested in getting devices and wearing watches and wearing biofeedback devices that'll tell us when they have these experiences, and then they report experiences through their narratives, what exactly is happening on their body in real time. Right now, the equipment that we provide people only measure the environment, but we are more interested in understanding what's happening to their actual, inside their bodies. So that's what we're getting into now.
Right, right. Do you think a lot of sightings of UAPs are causing a lot of strange events?
Well, that's a really good question because when people, there's a lot, there's, one camp or one group of people say the only interesting things are UFOs. And then the other camp says, oh, wait a minute, people are still having these effects and they don't see a UFO. So you can almost infer that just because you don't see something doesn't mean that there's not something in your vicinity. You can't see every single piece of light. I mean, if you think about it, the visible spectrum is just a small section of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're picking up all these crazy things. So it might be that, when people have experiences, there is something in their area. They just can't physically see it. So it's not so much a UFO thing, it's more a generalized thing that, people are, maybe seeing some energetic thing, some glow, some orb or something like that.
Mm. Are people being targeted with strange signals?
Well, and again, we don't know why one person is more susceptible and has a higher propensity of having these experiences than another one. I think, one of the things that I've talked with Gary Nolan about, who is another scientist that works in
Yeah,
this area. What makes a person so susceptible to having experiences and being able to have these things? There's some people that are just amazing. They can, they remote view and they do all these things. That why is one person better than another? So is it possible that they get interested? Is it some people are just more interesting to the phenomena than others? Or is there something in our genetic makeup that make us better at receiving the information that's coming from the phenomena? So we don't know, and that's one of the things that we do when we actually sign somebody up to take this to be part of the study. One of the things we ask them to do is fill out a survey, which gives us a little background on, what's their histology for, family histology, what's their medical histology, where do they live, what's the, what are the experiences that they're having, and that's the data that we're using. And on top of that, all the narratives that they give us on a day-to-day basis, we pull that apart and we try to understand more about that person to see, are there any patterns? Are one class of people, one group of people, one person that maybe has a certain blood type, or we don't know, but we're gathering the data to allow us to make those kind of determinations of why certain people are just much better receivers than other people. And it might be that they're not receivers. Maybe these people are just, they're transmitters. Maybe they're the ones that actually are making these things happen. We don't know. So that's part of the data that we're collecting and trying to understand, is that we're, gathering the data, having them take the survey questions, asking them questions, follow-up questions when they enter their narratives and things like that. So that's what we're trying to understand. That's a really good question that
very. It's
baffles
true.
us.
It's true what you say about that as well. I've been to with numerous people up there. Some people they'll say, "I've been once. I don't want to go again. I'm frightened. I'm
Right.
scared. Can you walk me back to the car?" I said, "Yeah." That means I've got to walk back on my own. Uh, I'm just being funny about it, but they say, "No, I want to go home now." They might have been
Yeah,
there 10 minutes. They
sure.
just don't like being there.
Right, because they sense it. So you can have two people standing side by side. One person will have a very profound experience. The other person will have no idea what the hell they're doing. They say, what's going on?" There was a incident with Dwayne. Dwayne's a very sensitive recipient of this information, so he picks up things that are amazing, and he'll have like this incredible episode where he will actually start developing, physical signs on his body that he's doing it, but somebody standing right next to him won't have a thing happen to him or even realize anything's going on. They'll just look over at Dwayne, and Dwayne will just be completely comatose, just standing there, without any reaction. So what is it? Why one person? Why not the other person? So it's very strange.
Oh, definitely very strange. Um, when they've had injuries on Skinwalker Ranch and the basin, do you think the injury is it the energy source from underneath then?
Well, it could be. You don't know. I mean, so is it possible that whatever this phenomena is doing, it's a communication link? Just say, hypothetically, say it's communicating, and it's communicating in such a way that when the information comes into our head, it's actually damaging us to some small extent. It's possible that it's not really malicious injury that's happening. It just might be injury because of just the way the signal enters our body. Maybe it affects our immune system. Maybe our immune system senses that there's some crazy thing going on, and that's one of the things that we've been investigating, is that a lot of the times the immune system gets hit when they have experiences. When they go to the doctor, their white counts are up, their red counts are up. So it's like almost your body senses there's something there that they have to get rid of, and it fires up, their system. So it does affect us in a lot of different ways that we're now trying to, gather data on.
I can imagine with you, every day is not a challenging day, but it's a new day, new beginning for you because you're always wanting to look for something else in your research.
Yeah, there's always something new coming up that say, oh, I didn't realize that happens. Like, you know, for instance, I mean, so there's a lot of instances that come through this system, and then you'd find something that it will never happen before. It's like this anomaly that happens. So, well, wait a minute, and then you go back through the data and you look and you find out that's happened a half a dozen times. So there's always something new, another way the phenomena reveals itself. In other words.
Oh, definitely. Shelley's just saying, AI is telling me I have spatial intelligence and microwave sound healing. Is this something common in experiences?
Yeah, I think that's quite true that they do. So what we do is we have, like I said, we look at their narratives, we look at this, and what we find out that there's a lot of consistent symptoms, or cross correlations between these people, and that's one of them.
I can imagine it is as well.
Yeah.
What you got planned for the future for yourself then?
So we're trying to get up. So this is, in fact, if you look at this, if whoever wants to go and read this thing, this is so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get 10,000 experiencers worldwide to be part of our thing. And I think that with those numbers, we can actually then start to really make a big difference. So what we're trying to do is we go from, we're at 300 right now, is to build up to 10,000. So over
Yeah.
the next year or so, or 2 years, we're going to be adding a lot more. Right now, it's growing very fast. In fact, it's growing faster than we can keep up with it. A lot of people are coming in that are, very excited about this because they want to be, not, they don't, it's not so much they want to be part of the experiment. They want to have control over what's going on to them on a day-to-day basis. I mean, so that's the big thing. So when they do the narratives, and they start seeing the data, and they get this, they basically start grabbing a little bit of control, and they're not scared about it. There's so many people scared of this thing. And I know there's a lot of people that will try to get rid of it somehow. And we have,
Yeah.
so one of the things that we've done is we've provided the ability to, like, um, to go ahead and enter a chat group with other people, so you can get in a chat group and basically go one on one, or you could be with a support specialist, which basically is somebody that will answer questions, like an experiencer that's been doing this for like many years will get on with a bunch of other people and start talking. Or you could just do peer to peer. So what you can have, like, say I want to talk to somebody, just one person, and basically we're talking about support. We're trying to give these people, there's some unfortunate people out there that just are devastated by this. So they need to talk to somebody. So we're offering that to people to give them the ability. We have a lot of volunteers that are ready to talk to them, the people that are in the study. So you can either talk in a group, you could talk, basically one-on-one in a chat room, or we can even do the video chat, so they can have a one-on-one video chat
Yeah.
with somebody. So that's the kind of thing that we're offering to people to allow them to get a handle on what's going on.
Yeah. So basically, they're not on their own because some people, think, oh, nobody wants to talk to me. Nobody's interested.
Yeah, the thing is that there's a lot of people interested, and that's so. And what we're finding is that the people that come into our study, they find out that they're not alone. All right, they're not alone, and not only that, there's a lot of people out there that want to help them and talk to them, and basically get them to be to basically match their wits with it, and have it part of their lives, as opposed to running their lives.
So, what's the best way to get in touch with you if they want to talk to you about this?
Yeah, so I mean, you can basically get on here. There is a way to, if you go over to the site, you can do a contact. You can actually go in here and put your name in. You do a message. We get back to you right away. We have a bunch of people that respond to this. We'll talk to you and start getting you involved and look at this. So if you go to this site, which is basically this, if you go to this QR code to the study, you'll come to this site, and then up here you can come to contact, and basically start. You can start talking and getting involved.
Yeah, it looks plain, is there? First name, last name, email address, and
And then
then a
yeah,
message.
and basically you
Message.
just it's amazing. People will actually put in gobs and gobs of data in here describing on what they're happening, and that gives us really good information. So when we do contact them, we know exactly what they're going through on a day-to-day basis, and gives us the ability to kind of position them so we know how to handle their situation.
Sounds interesting. Well, I hope everybody listens to this show tonight. And if you've been an experiencer out there, get in touch with Jim Segala.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That'd be great.
Well, I've loved the show tonight. It's been very interesting. Plenty of good questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is great.
And plenty of questions from chat room as well. It's very good as well. It helps the show to go on. And I
Yeah,
hope, I hope, for the best for you for the future.
excellent. Thank
Carry,
you so much. Yeah,
and
and I
carry on
hope you continue to do this.
your great work.
Thank you. I will.
And I tell Paul I've been talking with you.
All right. Yeah, can't wait to talk to Paul. Paul's great.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. Right, before I shut down, my guest next Wednesday, the 8th of April, is Steve Coles. He's also known as the Sasquatch Detective. He's next Wednesday, the 8th of April, 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Pacific, and 7 p.m. in the UK. So thank you very much. Let's go end the show. Yeah, thank you, Jim, and thank you to everybody who helped us out in the chat room tonight.
Sounds great. Okay.
Yeah.